They had to take down all those signs that said no masks or hats or bandanas.
Can't tell the robbers from the employees.
But the big question, why is anybody going into a bank?
I know, right?
Hey, my company gets money in the mail that I actually need to get in the bank. So otherwise I wouldn't be interested in doing that.
You could do a picture on your phone and deposit it that way.
If I had a cell phone, that would be a wonderful option.
Oh, so are we recording now?
We are live now,
Hats or bandanas.
and we are
Can't tell the
recording.
robbers from the employees.
All right,
Why is anybody going into a bank?
so I'm going to read
I
this
know, right?
statement.
Hey, my company gets money in the mail that I actually
Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12, 2020 order
On your phone and take it.
superseding certain provisions of the Open Meeting Law, General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 18, in the Governor's March 15, 2020 order imposing strict limitations on the number of people that may gather in one place, this meeting of the Southborough Master Plan Committee is being conducted via remote participation. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings as provided for in the order. A reminder that persons who would like to view this meeting while in progress may do so via the town website, www.southboroughtown.com/remote meetings. Okay, and we need to take a roll call attendance. Latrell here, McAleer. You have to say here.
Sorry, here.
Signs,
Here.
McKay,
Here.
McKee, sorry. Watson,
Here.
Stivers,
Here.
Probst,
Here.
Braccio,
Here.
Davidovich.
Mute.
You have to unmute yourself, Karen.
You're unmuted.
Okay, thank you. Here.
Challen,
Here.
Wallace,
Here.
very good. So our first item is just an update on the survey, which has been completed, and it's the link is on the Master Plan Committee's website, the town website, on my Southborough. It went out with the recreations email list. I think that's it. Anywhere else? Sarah? Sarah,
No,
fabulous job getting it everywhere.
thank you. The one place it didn't go out was via the entirety of the website bandwidth for the town, like the COVID alerts have been going out. Apparently those are restricted for just kind of emergency channels. So that was the one place that we didn't get that broad reach that we were hoping for. But other than that, I think we really covered a lot of ground getting it out.
And that's
Hey,
the
Sarah,
town e-alerts that it didn't go out on?
So it went out on the e-alerts. So if anyone is receiving an alert for the Master Plan Committee, if anyone is receiving an alert for the Planning Board, it would have gone out via the website there. But that broad e-alert that goes out to everyone in the whole town who's subscribed to anything. My understanding is that channel is kind of more of an emergency channel. And so it didn't go out via that, you know.
So Sarah, this is Karen speaking. So I loved the way it looked on the email. It was beautiful. And I tried to copy and paste it to Facebook because I have a couple of town Facebook groups that I'm a part of that I wanted to post it in, and it looked awful. So I was just wanted to get your kind of advice on that. You know, if there's some way that we could have a kind of Facebook friendly version of it.
Sure.
That would be really cool because I'm happy to send it to the different groups that I'm a part of in Southborough on Facebook.
Okay, perfect. I can work on that, maybe saving it as like a JPEG, as like a picture image
Nice.
rather
Nice.
than a PDF. Would
Yeah.
probably work, so I could try that.
Thank you. That would be great.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Mm.
Great, we had, so when, that went out like last week, right?
Yes.
And so a couple of days ago, Ralph from MAPC said that, was it 197 people had completed it and 117 had started it?
Yep. And so now those numbers are up even a little bit. 215 people have started it, and it looks like about 201, 202 people completed it.
That's awesome. That's great.
Yeah, that's great. Anything else on the survey?
Nothing else that I can think of. It's closing on the 22nd. So, want to make sure that we're keeping it at the forefront of people's minds for the next, week or two, since, it'll be closing, relatively soon.
Mm.
Great. So everybody else can feel free to send it to whoever they want.
Yeah, that's great. And Sarah, if you send a kind of Facebook friendly version of it, yeah, I bet I'm not the only one who's a part of different Facebook groups in Southborough. We could try to distribute it in the next couple of days.
Sounds good. I can get that done tomorrow, and then I'll send it out to everyone.
Perfect, thank you.
You're welcome.
And the other, Joyce had sent me a list from the town clerk of everybody over 65, and I don't see her here tonight, so I don't know if she wants to mail a survey out to everyone over 65. Looks like a pretty big list, but I can check with her on that and see if we can come up with some mailing funds. Right, on to the next thing, which is the theme group discussions. Does anyone want to volunteer to start?
I can go, but I'm happy to let somebody else go first if they want to.
Sam, it is.
Okay. Amy, I'm not actually very good with screen sharing on this stuff. Can you share the screen on the document that I sent?
I can't even put myself in prison, Sam.
Oh,
We'll see.
I can
Hey,
help with
Sam,
that.
what's your theme group?
This is the commercial diversity,
Okay, thank you. I thought so. I
and,
just wanted to
public-
verify.
public facilities and resiliency.
Thank you, Sam.
Awesome.
Just as an introduction, I went back and pulled together a lot of stuff that the group has done over the last months here as sort of the baseline, and then tried to reformat some of that into a document. I think I wound up with 3 or 4 pages
Nice.
for the various areas, and tried to start with what I saw as a compilation of what as a high level objective that sort of sets the tone for the area. And then under that list, some of the sub-objectives, which in fact probably are a lot of strategies as opposed to objectives or goals really, but tried to pull together the thoughts that folks had contributed along the way in one place that's relatively easy to review, read, and maybe pass along to MAPC as a starting point. And I've gotten feedback from most of the folks in the group that I was working with here. Still have a couple to yet to hear from. So my thought is that we could go through it quickly this evening And then I need to integrate some of the comments I've received in an updated version, which I can do probably later tonight or tomorrow, and then post it on the Google Docs site under this particular topic so people can look at it at that point. So that is my plan. If somebody has a better plan, I'm happy to do something else, but that at least gets it out there for people to look at. And Mimi, I also have a question about in terms of timing. When do we need to get something to MAPC, and do we need to have another meeting to sign off on any of this stuff, or can we simply pass it along to them and let them run with it?
Yeah, I was hoping to get like general goals for the visioning statement that MAPC is working on, because they're done on June 30th.
Okay. Well, this is, I think, far from perfect, but at least it's a starting point that people can comment on, edit, whatever. I have no pride of authorship since most of it came from other people to start with. So.
I don't think, Mimi, I think Sam's asking whether or not we need a formal vote on these draft documents. I mean, my thought is no, we don't, because they're drafts. And where we'll need the formal vote is when we look at the output from the MAPC.
Well, I think we need a formal vote on the general goal statements, like the general goals for the visioning statement, which is what MAPC is working on.
Right, but to Sam's point, if he's got a draft document and then he's got some edits, if we then have to have another meeting to go back to review the edits, then, I mean, I think we're going to run out of runway here.
We could vote to approve the goals in whatever areas we talk about this evening with edits as discussed, and deputize somebody to include those edits and move forward that way. I've seen it done that way before.
That sounds great to me. Also, I think Joyce just joined. We had mentioned before about Joyce.
Mimi, should I try to share the screen on this document?
Yeah, I can't. I have very old technology and it's spinning around trying to bring
Sam,
up the email.
It's Sam. So it's easy if you actually bring up the document that you're referencing, so
Yep.
you can see it on your screen or another screen.
Got it.
Then at the bottom it says share screen, and it's going to bring you up a grid of all your open programs,
Yep.
documents, etc.
Apparently, the host has disabled screen sharing. Is the message I get?
I can. Okay,
Yeah.
I don't know how the these are set up. So what I can do is I can move you up to a co-host and
Okay.
then you can share your screen. So
Yeah.
I apologize. I didn't know that that was a safe
Okay.
hold, but now you should be all set.
Good. Thanks.
Yeah.
Does that mean my pay is tripled?
That yes.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Very happy to hear that.
0 times 3
Zero
is still
times
0.
Excellent.
Sam, how different is the document that you currently have from the one I saw late afternoon today?
None.
Okay, because I was going to try to share it also, but I had the same problem that you did. It said the host had disabled the share.
It sounds like, because Sam, you're now.
I think
a
I got
host,
it here.
You should be okay.
Oh, yeah, there you go.
got it.
Got
Yeah.
it?
Yep.
Okay, good. And again, comment was that there are already some edits that I want to make on it, but this gives folks a general idea of structure, and the content here is probably not going to be hugely different, I would think. So what I did was to go back and say topic areas, commercial diversity and public services. I was tasked with putting the thing together with input from the folks who'd worked on various pieces of this. And we have consolidated this topic from some of the original listings that we had. So this one, at least my understanding, includes the points in the original matrix that we had for diversity of commercial development, public services, resiliency, strengthening of public and private schools, and population build out and funding mechanisms. So for each one of these, I've gone through and created a statement out of the prior work that we had for the high level goal, which folks can read. I'm not going to read the whole thing here. And then for diversity of commercial development, we recognize that we've got different areas of town that need different things. One size fits all doesn't work here. And so we then had, again, a number of objectives / strategies here for different areas of town. We've talked about these things in a variety of ways. And ultimately, we've got to go through these and sort of prioritize and maybe add things, remove things, or whatever. But I think this gives a fair flavor of the conversations that have occurred to date. So Route 9, increase use intensity, downtown, figure out how to make it vibrant, alive, etc. Fayetteville, sidewalks, trail network connection, parking. Corderville, Southville, sidewalks, connectivity to trails, traffic issues, and take advantage of the train station asset that we have there. Public services, facilities and utilities, and resiliency. There are two parts to this really, since we had a separate piece on resiliency, so I tried to put these together. Again, high level goal is to deliver a wide range of public services to our residents, have these services and the infrastructure protected against risks associated with natural disasters and climate change. And on the public services piece, we actually laid out some fairly specific things, the group that was focused on that. So look at the plans that we have now, identify gaps, and figure out how we can fund it in various ways. And then go down to a more micro level as far as budgets and so forth and responsibilities. So again, this is a combination of goals and strategies and some implementation steps here, but whoops. Automatic size adjustment. I got a very sensitive trackpad. And on the resiliency topic, again, we had a lot of good work on that from a variety of sources. And so we look at a number of components here. And I'm not going to, again, read through this thing, but people can see this. So next is strengthen public and private schools. Roger and I have had good opportunity to chat in various ways. We've had a conversation with the school superintendent, and again, there's a lot of transition in the schools. Roger has made some good points that, that we don't know at this point what the longer term impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic are. They're going to affect a lot of activities and institutions and towns, and Roger's correctly pointed out that the schools may be one of the most affected from this longer term, given the change in the learning model that people are using there, and you wonder how much of that's going to carry forward, either out of necessity or people find out that, wow, this actually works pretty well. I pick on Matt for a second. I attended the technology committee meeting earlier this week, and they were talking about the fact that it's pretty interesting that it's now a lot easier these days to get quorums for meetings, and with the electronic connection, as a matter of fact, and easier for the public to connect and track what's going on. And there are some pluses and minuses with that, but I think that there's some interesting lessons to be learned as we go through this process for the way we deliver services in many areas. And again, I'm guessing that the schools are going to be most strongly affected, but we'll have to see what happens. It's hard to predict at this point.
Yeah, it's part of resilience plans, right? Resilience for all of our services, not just natural disaster and climate change, but also for pandemics like this. Unfortunately, hoping this is not the new norm, but we do need to be prepared for this to happen again in the future, just in case.
Yep. And sometimes if you got a disruption like this, it actually forces people to look at things in new ways. And so there
acts as a catalyst.
Out of necessity. And people sometimes open their eyes and say, wow, that actually worked pretty well. Why haven't we been doing more of that in the past?
Yeah.
So again, schools, I think, are obviously a primary opportunity for rethinking some of these things, but you're right, Matt, could go in a number of different directions. So again, we need to continue to find ways of the school world to enhance what we think we already have in terms of a very strong position, and figure out ways that we can afford to keep that position and enhance it in ways that don't depend strictly on outspending everybody else, because we're probably not going to be able to find the money long term to continue to throw more and more money at any of our areas in town. And so we've got to figure out how to do it smarter, but there are some interesting ways to do that, as a matter of fact, we think. And I think the schools are pretty interested in having those conversations. So again, we've got a lot of a lot of things on the list here, and Roger and I plan to continue to work with the school folks once they settle down a little bit. It's hard to get people to focus on much of anything but pandemic response at this point. So let people read for a second here. One of the things that's most interesting is the schools we thought had an opportunity to be the sort of the center of the universe for a lifelong learning structure in town longer term, to coordinate not only sort of longitudinal from daycare all the way through continuing education, but figure out how to connect with a lot of other institutions around, et cetera. They're a very natural source for that. And it'd be great if we could figure out a way to do that. That to me is at least a very interesting sort of defensible winning position if we could sort out how to do that, which is more management than money potentially. Oops, sorry again. So next area is the population and build out. I have less content here, but the goal is you've got to manage our growth, we think, in order to be able to balance commercial interest, residential interest, financial pressures, and be able to pay for the wonderful things that we'd like to be able to do. And the sad truth is those of us who were involved in the zoning advisory committee long ago, MAPC did a build out model for Southborough. And at that point, and we still have something like 800 buildable lots in town. Corina has a better number than I do, but depending on how you develop that, you could have relatively low growth in population or huge growth in population to the tune of an additional, we've got like 3,500 housing units. We could take that 800 additional up to as much as 2,500 additional housing units. And the sad truth is financially that for every residential build, advisory did a study a few years ago, we lose money because it costs more to educate the children who live in those houses than we get in tax revenue from the houses on average. So you got to be careful to coordinate all those pieces and figure out how we can get the kind of services and facilities we want, be able to pay for it, and generate the tax revenue. And the answer comes back to Route 9 probably. But again, complicated problem, but worth thinking carefully about and trying to plan and manage around. We looked at funding mechanisms. Roger and I had some conversations about this. And again, you think about broadening the tax base. Simple example is the meals tax that we recently voted to adopt, which now has gotten a crimp in it because of the restaurants are closed. So that's going to be a lot less revenue than people have been looking for. And that actually, though, finds ways to generate taxes from people who don't live in Southborough, which is great for Southborough. There aren't that many opportunities for that kind of thing, but those are the kind of things you look for. Public-private partnerships, philanthropy. Again, a lot of towns, I think, are getting more leverage out of philanthropy in an organized way than Southborough has done historically. The community fund does a wonderful job, but there may be more ways to actually pursue that in a targeted way. And then other funding sources, project-specific stuff. So I think that's what I had. So each one of these, you've got a high-level goal, plan for, manage, balance growth here, and so forth, that could potentially provide what MAPC is looking for in terms of goals. And then these other pieces are a reflection of the conversations that the various working groups have had historically. So Mimi, I don't know how that fits with what you were expecting in terms of MAPC stuff or what other people are doing, but at least it's a starting point and captures a lot of the things that we've talked about previously. And, I have no pride of authorship. If that's in the wrong direction, people feel free to let me know, then I'll take another whack at it.
Thanks, Sam. I think it's great. Can we go back to the beginning and like discuss each section individually and get a feeling for what people are thinking?
Sure. So I make it a little smaller so people can see more of it. If it's too small, I can't read it. So.
Mm.
So, so what are people's feelings on Route 9? I saw that under funding mechanisms, you had increased height of buildings. I don't know how much more intensity we want on Route 9. Sorry, excuse my
Route
dog.
9, your third point on Route 9, improve commercial marketing position to better distinguishing Southborough from surrounding towns. That's like pick and choose. Should we also include some language around improve commercial marketing to position more of a collaborative Route 9 commercial development? I don't want to be that, we're different. I think, a lot of the development stuff kind of like sprawls along Route 9. And I was thinking of more of how do we not siphon away, but how we look at Route 9 as a whole versus, hey, get out of Southborough, get out of Westborough and go to Southborough.
Yeah.
Well, so right now what's happening is people are leaving Southborough and going to Westborough or Framingham. So the idea of that is like, how do we distinguish ourselves so business want to come to Southborough instead of Westborough or Framingham? or
So
Marlborough?
why are they leaving Southborough? Because of the development in sewer?
I think sewer has to do with it. I heard because they got tipped from Westborough.
Marlborough has been paying money for tax incentive programs. Karen Shimkus actually has made the observation in one of our earlier meetings that we actually may not have the space configuration that people are looking for now. There's apparently a lot of demand for workspace, kind of flexible space. And there's one of those buildings on Route 9 right next to shrubs and trees that's been reconfigured or being reconfigured. And they just got a permit for additional parking there to have a lot more people working in there in smaller flexible spaces. So if that's the kind of space that's actually renting now, and we don't have that space so much, then we're, at least she suggested, which is believable to me.
Yeah, I wonder what this pandemic is going to do to that thought of shared space. Because that was supposed to be the up and coming idea where people would all come together and jam into one space and smaller square footage per person. But I don't know.
It is. I think it's going to continue. It'll go back to that. I mean, before this, I was working out of a WeWork location in Cambridge. Our company was based out of there, and it was incredibly popular. And after this pandemic goes back, I think it'll increase in popularity, and people will go back to it because it's very efficient in terms of your cost. You can rent a desk, you can start small, you can grow as your company grows. You don't have to lease an office for a large building for a year on end. You can lease a desk, then an office, etc., for a month at a time.
Yeah. And EDC has been working on this. It seems to me, again, there's opportunity to try to figure out with them how we position ourselves. And I like, Tom, your comment. I mean, there are elements of competition here, certainly. On the other hand, there may be a strategy that says we work with the Westboroughs, Marlboroughs, et cetera, and say put together some sort of a package that for whatever reason can be marketed to people coming into the area generally. And then we wind up getting our share, hopefully, of people who can attract from north of town, south of town, wherever. That doesn't happen fast, unfortunately, but it's not going to happen if you don't start on it. Other comments on this? Maybe do you want to keep moving? Or what do you want to do?
Anything else? What about 5-story buildings? What are people's thoughts on that? I'm not a fan personally.
I'm open to it. I think if it's well done, The sad truth, I think, is that Route 9 is really the only source of tax revenue in the commercial world that we have out there. I'm hard pressed to think about other things. There are a lot of things that people would like to spend money on, and if we can't afford to pay for it, then that limits our options in terms of doing a number of these other things. So that makes what people want to do. The choice ultimately the voters will make. I'm not thinking 20 stories, but 4 or 5 potential. If you
yeah, I'd be as supportive of it. Again, it all comes down to how well it fits and if it looks nice, etc. If it's done well, I think it would work well.
Build it into a hillside, but the wastewater has been the constraint historically. But wastewater treatment plants are actually becoming less expensive as technology improves for that. So it's not free, certainly, or even cheap, but it's possible to, for the right economics, if you got a building that you can lease to people, potentially you could put in a wastewater treatment plant, or you could get a group of property owners to go together on a wastewater treatment plant, as we have now along Route 9. Those buildings, for most of them, have wastewater plants.
How tall is the Yaz building on Route 9?
3 stories, I think.
Is it? I thought it was 4 or 5. Okay.
I don't think so, but I'm not sure. But it's sort of built into the hillside there, which again is the way you want to do those things, if you can.
All right, anything else on Route 9? So are we in agreement with those as general goals for our visioning document?
Those are goals. The details are as the devil's in the details of that. But those are goals. I would say Route 9 those are our goals.
Okay. Yeah, so we're not looking for the details right now. The visioning statement that MAPC is kind of an overview of what our goals are, and then we'll dig into the devilish details on each chapter. There'll be a chapter on each of these themes.
But if we send them something like this, Mimi, they can do some picking and choosing out of what they think is the right to express all this. I mean, if they want one sentence, I think the first sentence up there could work, but they may want to add a little flavor from some of the other things that not necessarily.
Yeah, I mean that would be my hope, is that they can, add some I don't know what's the word, add some value, add some quality around this, because otherwise they just become, I'm hoping they're going to be more than just a kind of a packaging.
Are you suggesting this needs quality added to it, Judith?
No, that's why I didn't get the right word. But there's some of the statements they might be able to kind of add a little bit more color to it based on what they've seen in other plans, based in what they know generally gets put into these plans.
That would be the hope.
Well, that's a real added value, is the benchmarks, around what other people have done.
Or again, ideas that other people have been successful with in terms of pursuing some of these things. But really back to Roger's comment previously that the pandemic really puts a wrench in a lot of these things in terms of added uncertainty. And so I think nobody really knows how these things are going to come out. I think you just have to sort of take your best shot at it and remain flexible and keep pushing on it.
Yeah, I think in our discussion that it seems that there will be some long-lasting change. There was some long-lasting change. In some cases, I think, as Sam said, it's going to be by necessity. In other cases, it may be by choice.
So you got to keep your eyes open and stay flexible.
Sam, you pointed out from a development point of view that residential is not cost effective in the sense that we may have to educate certain classes of students, etc. What are the benefits or what are the costs, I guess, associated with retail development, for example, along Route 9? Has anyone given that any thought?
There's been conversation around that. I don't have actual numbers for that, Bill. I don't know if advisory had taken a look at that while I was on there. I don't think we did. But I think, again, you've got retail, any business activity generates property tax revenue, certainly. And then there is a tax on inventory that, again, retailers and particularly warehouse operations will pay. And so you get in anything of value. One of my favorite examples, most people may have heard it, but some northern suburb town a few years ago got a bump about $1 million in property tax that they didn't know where it came from. They looked around and discovered that somebody had rented a large office building, gutted it, and put in a server farm, put in millions of dollars worth of expensive computer equipment that generated personal property tax revenue. 3 people running it, no traffic, no service cost, etc. So it was a wonderful money generator for the town. You don't find those kind of things, but anything, again, that has physical assets, inventory, and real estate rental income generates property tax. So I would think that retail is good. Warehouses are even better because they don't have the traffic and whatever, or they have trucks. So
truck traffic, yeah. And you, I guess the general impression I got was where you were looking at office buildings as opposed to retail.
Not necessarily. Yeah, anything that, I think you got to be careful. I've had an ongoing conversation with EDC. I'm sorry, Kathy's not here tonight. But I think we need to be targeted in terms of what we want and have folks focused in a particular direction as opposed to anybody who knocks on the door, great, if you're a business, we'll sign you up. Generally, that's not bad, but there may be things that we would rather have more of. Again, like I suggest, a warehouse, for example, that's filled with expensive stuff that we can generate tax revenue from without a lot of additional negative impact from traffic and so forth. But again,
so the new distribution center, was it for Ken's Dressings? Is that generating much revenue for us?
Does generate tax revenue for us. Good observation. There's currently a flap going on over the noise from trucks idling there. So there's no free lunch in this world. But that's the kind of thing that does generate us. I don't know what the number is for Ken's, but that's been a real plus for the town economically.
So light manufacturing may make some sense.
Yeah, it could be.
Occurs to me that if we're talking about putting programs together or in programs to incent retail development, that the type of retail development may make a difference to the program in terms of the programs we have to put in place to make it happen.
It certainly would, I would think, yeah. And again, EDC claims to understand how that kind of stuff works, and so, but I don't think they've had as much direction, frankly, from the Board of Selectmen, none, in terms of what we're looking for. And I think that's something we should be doing.
Has EDC done a competitive analysis of various different types of space of Southborough versus other towns?
Not in such a formal way, but there are several members who are commercial real estate people, and they talk about that a fair amount, and they claim that we're not overly competitive now, as a matter of fact. And there are things that we ought to be doing to try to be more competitive. But again, there's not a lot of traction in terms of taking that and producing a program that generates marketing effort. I mean, it's fascinating because there's a guy locally, Boston University, there in Northeastern, I guess, who studies this kind of stuff. And just actually, I heard him make a presentation recently at a big meeting where he looked at like 60 towns around Massachusetts, trying to figure out, who is gaining business, who's losing business, and what themes are there in terms of what makes that happen. And he found that like there were 8 or 10 factors that were important in terms of people drawing business and jobs to communities. And almost all of them were things that the town could control. Very few, like being located near Logan Airport, for example, one of the dimensions we tested. That really didn't make as much difference as things like an effective marketing tool, communication, a good website. They're looking, they find your website and they're intrigued and they follow up on it, for example. Follow up in terms of making people feel like that you want them here was a silly one that actually does have an impact. And so that's not very costly. Tax incentive programs was not as big a deal, as a matter of fact. So again, I can't remember the others on the list, but parking was one that was important. We got a lot of parking. So again, there was nothing on that list that we shouldn't be able to do to be very effective, but we've not done a very focused job historically of trying to package ourselves and compete for these positions.
Now, there's one point that I just want to make on the third one, and maybe this is me. And this is why I want to do more of a collaborative Route 9 development plan, because what positions Southborough above some of those other towns? And the one thing that positions Southborough is our access to the interstates, both Route 9 to the Pike going east, 495 going north and south. If you notice in Northborough off of Cimarano Drives, they've been building a lot of distribution centers, warehouse, FedEx, et cetera. AJ Dewey, trucking companies. That, when I see something like that, I don't want it. I think the truck traffic is probably the worst kind of traffic we can have. But we got to make sure we're not attracting, or we want to stop attracting that distribution truck traffic. There's an advantage of Southborough where we currently are, as I see it. You can easily go east, you can go north and south. You're close to the Pike heading the other way. It's a great location for that.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, we've got limited space when it gets right down to it, as a matter of fact. We don't have all that much industrial property. I mean, EMC Dell property over there is the choice place to think about doing something significant. And who knows what Dell is going to do with that property, but they seem to continue to waffle on talking about it, which tells me maybe they don't have a plan. It's hard for me to believe they're likely to invest a lot in that property, but we're not talking to them as much as I think we should be. And it would be great if we actually had a proposal to say, here's what we think ought to happen with that property. Help us figure out how to make that happen.
Agreed.
And help us to get more than just parking.
Yeah.
Which is what usually happens to the border development.
Yeah, exactly. So again, this is still a fluid document, so if people have other comments, when I post this on the Google Docs later, people can feel free to send a red line along. Actually, if you would send it to me directly without copying everybody, it would be cleaner in terms of open meeting law kind of stuff. So we keep going?
Okay, on to downtown. Yep.
Is that a vision to conduct an engineering study, or our vision is to have a improved stormwater and wastewater management?
Yeah, make stormwater and wastewater work downtown, basically.
Yeah.
But the vision is not to have an engineering study. I guess that's
correct. This came off of another list. I should have done a little more.
Yeah, something like that. Yep. That's the vision. The rest of that I like.
And that's actually maybe closer than we think. People are familiar with the parcel 5440 story.
Is that behind the pizza place?
Behind the pizza place, yeah. National Grid or Mass Electric owns it. And we are working with them to try to figure out, is there a way the town can acquire that? The pandemic has slowed that process a little, but that's still on the table. If that were available for the town, that certainly opens up parking. You could put picnic tables, a playground or something back there potentially. That would be more of a destination kind of thing. Put a place where you could have pop-up businesses, parking places. To Yeoman's has an ice cream truck that they drive around, so it'd be great to have them come in there and park it for a few hours every summer evening kind of thing. So those kind of things have been very successful in other towns. If we have a facility for that or a place for that, I think that could bring some life back into the downtown area. So.
Sam, are there any facilities on that property now?
No. There used to be a small transformer or two there that 50 years ago blew up one night, I'm told. Created a very exciting event.
Yeah.
Nothing there now.
And they have no plans to do any commercial development there of any kind, right?
Not as far as, it's actually not a buildable lot. The frontage is 10 feet. I think, and I have not seen any surveys, I think the driveway by the nail parlor there to the parking lot behind the pizza parlor, I think that is that's Mass Electric property, and they got an easement to get behind the building there. And so you need at least 20 feet now under zoning bylaw, I think. Mimi, is that right? To frontage to build anything in that district. I don't remember, but 10 is not enough. So technically they can't build on it. Plus it's right next to the train track back there, so not clear a lot of people want to live there.
So there's no possibility for some sort of cooperative development, so to speak, going on.
Could be, but again, that's not their business typically. And what they have done in other settings, they've actually sold these properties or donated to towns, because at one point they wanted to put a substation there, but the system developed so they don't need it, we're told.
Gotcha. So the preference would be to sell the property.
I think it would be. They're paying taxes on it now. And particularly if there was a transformer back there that leaked oil somewhere, that could create a hazardous waste problem. And towns actually can get insurance for that kind of thing if they develop it in the right way, like pave over it, for example. So we're not going to put a sandbox back there for the kids to play in. But towns have done that successfully, and my theory is that we ought to be able to think about that. So.
All right.
Again, there are other things we could do here on these bullet points, but I thought this was a start, so let's get it down and refine later. Anything else on downtown?
Any other comments on downtown?
Well, is the rail facility through downtown, is there any movement or any change in perspective on that?
Not that I've heard. I mean, there's like 2 freight trains or boxcar movements a day or something that go through there.
Very light, yeah.
Next up through Marlborough. Actually, it's fascinating because our friend John Della Pascoli of 84 Main Street and Fayetteville Hall fame actually has a LP gas facility in Grafton that is connected in the railroad to that track. You can get there from Grafton. People are concerned that there may be LP gas tankers going through there at some point, which would be interesting.
Well, it goes right by Suburban Protein, the rail track.
Yeah, I've never seen any LP propane tank cars on that track, but box cars usually for.
The track is in such poor condition that they can't run a train more than 4 or 5 miles an hour.
Yeah. I know Cat have been talking, the Trails Committee have been talking about getting something with CSX to actually open up that track for a trail alongside the train track, which has happened in some other communities, used to be CSX would never do that. I think that has been done in other places now, not frequently, but could be a wonderful thing if we do that. Is that accurate, Kat?
Yes, that is correct. Yeah.
Because linking the senior center facilities, that is the senior housing facilities, to the downtown and other areas to the downtown in that sense might be a real advantageous thing to do in terms of development for the downtown itself.
Absolutely. That's all sort of part of the overall sidewalk/trail network to
Yep.
give people better access.
Right, and keep people with wheelchairs out of the middle of Route 30 would be a good thing.
I have seen that, so brave souls.
I'll say.
Okay, shall we move on, Mimi?
Sure.
Fayetteville, Corderville, Southville, somewhat similar. Interesting to see what's going to happen to Fayetteville with the Fayetteville Hall development. I can sort of pull some more economic development down Central Street there, maybe, which is already supporting some business activity.
Has that been closed on?
I think so. I'm not 100% sure, but I think the selectmen voted and I signed some stuff.
We did. Yep.
You signed some stuff?
I did. I think I now have to pay JDP's mortgage on it. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
He told me don't bother reading it.
How about Southville or something of that nature? Down by the train station. What's that all about?
Train station is huge opportunity, I think.
Mhm.
I go to a lot of workshops around the state, and I'm always impressed at how eager people are to have a T connection. People would kill for that in most places that don't have it. And I don't think we've done much of anything with that. It's hard to change, but you're not going to get anywhere if you don't start. One interesting thing is the state actually has money for parking around T stations. And we've been talking with Representative Dykma about how to get in line for some of that stuff. And she observed at one point at a selectmen's meeting, I think, that the T is interested in doing things like double decking, triple decking parking lots. So we could potentially increase the capacity of that parking lot significantly and have the T, the state, pay for some of that as part of their transportation initiative.
But Sam, that's all good, but what, I don't want to be selfish, but what's the benefit of Southborough having more parking there? If we
Well,
have
you got to think
revenue?
carefully about it. You're right, Tom. And one of the things is you ought to do that in a way that, for example, could help housing in that part of town. If you could, for example, find ways to motivate more affordable housing in that part of town within walking distance of the T station, that would be great. Parking, again, I facetiously suggested that put a second deck on that, but preserve that for Southborough residents only. Make it more available, because a lot of Southborough residents have trouble finding spaces there. But I don't have a solution to that, Tom, but you got to think carefully about how you could use the capacity. But that's a potential expansion opportunity. And I think retail down there too. We just approved a transfer of the ownership of Fitzgerald's store to the family of the current owner. So discussions about how to revitalize that a little bit in that area for a long time. Lisa knows more about that than I do.
What's the current status of the Fitz?
I was just going to say, I agree, it's an untapped potential down there.
Yep.
What's the current status of the parking lot at Fitzgerald's?
Not aware of any change down there. They've talked about doing some different things there, but
I
nothing.
think they were building out their own private T parking there for a while, and they started some work, but then stopped.
Yeah. I don't know. I think there was some planning board action at one point for site plan for that, wasn't there, maybe?
There is the site plan approval for parking there. And then I think someone got sick in their family, or the developer started and didn't finish, or something happened. And I know they asked for an extension, but they should better getting close to running out of time on the
There's
extension.
nothing imminent there, maybe. So
Is in terms, I mean, we talked about transportation, parking, et cetera, and having that in proximity with respect to commercial development. Is it possible to do commercial development in that area? Office buildings, things of that nature, or is that just not possible or even desirable?
There is some commercial zoning down there along the river, the railroad tracks, actually. But it's on I think it's on the south side of Southville Road along there. There's actually a commercial building, I guess office building there across from the T station, and the restaurants down there, and the contractor's yard kind of thing farther down there. And National Fence is down there, I think. So, but it's not, I mean, the property is very narrow down there, so you're not going to build, much there. Opportunity for bowling alley or archery range at one point. But
Right.
but again, think long term. There may be some interesting zoning things you could do to think about combination of retail, office, housing along there to create a corridor that people could easily get to the train station to commute either into Boston or to Worcester out of the west.
Because Route 9 seems to be pretty much predicated upon automobile traffic, and at the same time, what we have is potential for transportation along that rail corridor. But we don't have the kinds of facilities that we have Route 9 back down there by the rail corridor. And I was just wondering if it was desirable to put in place a concept that dealt with that in our objectives here.
Yeah, that's interesting. And the state's idea along the rail line there is actually to electrify it and then make it work more like the T, as a matter of fact, have more frequent trains, smaller trains, more frequent trains along that rail line. That's not a near-term goal, but that's something that the state transportation folks are very interested in, and the legislature is at least mildly supportive of that, I think. So again, my theory is that's a real asset. I'm not smart enough to know how it ought to be developed, but it would be great to have somebody who sort of is in that development / planning world with some real skills to think about it. Over the next 10 to 20 years, put something together that creates a real source of strength for us down there.
A little bit of focus on it, maybe that would be useful.
Yeah.
I had the opportunity to talk with Ms. Dykema. I don't know, it seems like forever ago here, but one of the points I was trying to make with her is when she was talking about the development of rail traffic and commuter traffic, that in reality, to eliminate congestion, automobile congestion, etc., that a more comprehensive plan for the community supported by the state might be a great idea, and we would mitigate congestion and all sorts of other issues associated with a central transportation hub like our train station.
Right. Yeah.
She seemed to think that was a reasonable idea, and if my take is, if in fact one can get the state to begin to think about it, maybe we can get some money to make that happen.
Yeah, I think that is, again, over a longer period of time, pretty realistic. But the interesting there, the state is actually also very interested in supporting local development for interconnection. So, for example, to be able to get through our sidewalk or trail network from the T station up to Route 9 in a way that is workable for commuters. So, they've talked about putting electric bike stations down there, but again, somebody taking a bike down up Corderville Road to get to Route 9 is taking their life in their hands. So I think thinking about ways to enhance sidewalks and trails for those kind of connections, I think is the kind of thing that the state is very interested in funding. So I see that as sort of an overall package kind of deal to say, here is a way to potentially take some traffic off of Route 9, which they're extremely eager to do. But again, we don't have that sort of comprehensive proposal yet, but I think we could certainly develop that if we.
Right.
Is there a way to get the MWRTA to put a route from the train station down Route 9? I know they don't have a bus that goes there now.
Yeah, I think anything's possible there if we take it to them with a proposal and help them find funding for it.
So they have, I know they have MWRTA has a bus that comes down from Marlborough once or twice per day down to the train station, and then back in the evenings.
Yeah, not very frequent, but they do sort of the north-south connection there.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not very well utilized either.
Hmm.
But that's, I mean, that's, if we can put an objective like that in a document like this, or in our final document, that might make some sense in terms of giving us focus over the next few years, dozen years, to get the state involved in something like this. Don't forget, I'm very convinced that with self-driving automobiles and self-driving taxis, et cetera, there's going to be kind of a change in the way things work with respect to transportation and integrating with specific hubs. And I don't know if there's an opportunity for us to utilize resources to make that sort of stuff happen for us or not. It's tough to tell.
I guess there's no good spots for high density housing near the train station.
Not necessarily true. I mean, if there's a plan, properties turn over time. And you can, with zoning, for example, incentivize people to build whatever you're interested in developing. Increased density. Developers generally want increased density, so you can provide bonuses or motivation to do that kind of stuff. And over time, if the money is there, people will pay for properties as they become available and change neighborhoods that way, which is in some ways not very popular, certainly, but again, there are a variety of things you can do with a plan over a longer period of time. They're not going to happen if you let it happen randomly. So.
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure where the Hopkinton Southborough line ends, but I know on the south side of the river, there are a number of farms and open areas there that could potentially be developed if that was the objective, so to speak.
I don't think that's Southborough, though, as far as I know.
That's what I'm not sure of. Yeah, I don't know where it is. But
maybe we can annex it.
Yeah, that's what Wish is for, I guess.
Actually, they're desperate for water. We have water, so maybe we can do a deal.
So the question: do we add something in here about zoning for housing near the train station?
I'll add it to this point. Business, housing.
That's good. Yeah, it looks like our Southborough town ends at the river. That's the border.
It does. Yeah, I think I thought.
Yeah.
I heard Venezuela just got invaded by Colombia, so maybe we can follow that model.
Yeah, that's what we need.
Send some Green Berets into Hopkinton.
It was a boatload of mercenaries or something.
Right.
So
Yeah, exactly.
I think it's already been done.
Anything else? Should we move on to public facility
services? Hey, Mimi, at this pace, we're not going to get very far tonight.
Yeah, I noticed that.
How many other of these do we have to do?
4.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a plan to accelerate the pace, or I don't quite know what the right model is?
I'll simply mute my screen.
I don't know. What do you think?
Do we focus on just the first high level statement, see if people
have a goal,
and then take additional comments after the fact? Anybody who wants to send in a red line with comments, do it that way.
Sure. So the thinking being that the goal is all that MAPC really needs for right now?
That was my understanding, but I don't
Okay.
know.
All right, that's a good idea.
And again, I'm happy to chat about this all evening, but
Hmm.
everybody else's airtime here. Okay, public service facilities. Public services, resiliency. I guess the question then is there anything in the additional detail that we want to roll into the high level goal? Or is that sufficient?
I didn't realize the town of Southborough owned dams.
We don't actually, the MWRA owns the dam with the Sudbury Reservoir. But, you know, that used to be the primary reservoir for Boston.
Right.
Late 1800s. That was Boston's water supply.
There's a statement here that says access and make repairs to dams.
Yeah.
Prior to hazard. I didn't know that we had a say in that, so to speak.
Well, we don't have a direct say, but we could motivate the MWRA or DCR. I guess DCR is responsible for that maintenance. But it's certainly a risk for Southborough, potentially. So that's why that was on the list.
So any comments on the goal, or are we good with that?
Going once, going twice.
I have a question on conduct a water supply vulnerability assessment. Is that something the town should do? Is that something MWRA should do? And we should just ask them to provide us with that type of assessment?
I think the town actually can do that. MWRA does that. I don't know if you folks know, I'm actually on the MWRA advisory board, executive committee. And so I go to their meetings and they actually do a pretty good job of this kind of stuff generally. And they know things about this and they've done a good job of providing for redundancy, as a matter of fact. We happen to be in great shape water-wise in that we are at a place in the distribution system that has redundancy. There are some places that don't still at this point. And so, but again, I think that that one for us really sort of assumes MWRA is going to continue to deliver, which I think is pretty likely. But then we take that water and send it in various places in town. And so from the MWRA connection on to our various users is where I think the focus of this is likely to be. We've got water tanks, for example, that some feel may need some replacement or augmentation in some places. We have no water on Pine Hill, for example, and a couple of other places. That ought to be fixed, but that's a vulnerability.
And is it further down? I mean, we're talking about water, but this is also public services, about extending the gas lines to the south side of town.
That's a utility that goes in 2A here, I think, in terms of a plan.
Is it 2A?
It's not listed there, but that's a good point. I say existing plans are sufficient. I say that I think that comes under the existing plans for doing things. And I think the answer is water and gas are two things that would be helpful to, and ultimately wastewater, potentially, in various places. Any other thoughts on the general statement? Start this. Good to go with that for now.
For a goal and a vision, I think the high level is fine.
Okay.
I agree. Yeah.
Going once, going twice, gone. Okay. Public-private schools.
Sorry, just a quick question on the previous one, the resiliency. Does that include technology infrastructure, I assume? Maybe I missed the line there.
It should.
Maybe add a note about information systems resiliency.
I'll figure out some other words for
Okay,
it.
sounds good. All right, thanks.
Thanks, man. Okay, schools. Again, very general statement, but I see the schools, I guess, as a core asset going forward that ripples through many parts of the town's infrastructure, society, etc.
Mhm.
That looks good to me. Anyone else?
I mean, one of the things that I'm thinking now in terms of community concept. A lot of people are certainly interested in schools as traditionally defined, deals with their children. You've mentioned the concept of continuing education through middle and old age, for example. We have committees and other organizations in town which would like to do that sort of stuff, which adds a good deal of flavor to the community itself and potentially can provide us with a cohesiveness within the community. But those organizations are somehow disassociated with school as a resource, whether it's a physical building resource or some other type of program that is associated with it. How are those organizations and how is that concept to be integrated in with what we kind of define as the schools today?
Great point, Bill. And again, I think I see that as the this bottom point here is integrated structure, lifelong learning, social engagement, recreation activities, other community activities to, again, reinforce the sense of community issue. It brings in the arts groups, the music groups, whatever, the schools, for example. I mean, St. Mark's actually puts on a wonderful series of concerts that brings in some very professional musicians, for example, and other performers that are sadly very poorly attended. So again, taking advantage of all those resources, integrating them better, communicating, make people aware of those kind of things, ultimately, I think brings people together in settings that they would not normally interact in. And that kind of social interaction, I think, is a real driver for social vitality, sense of community, and so forth. So you know, I see that as in recreation, or he does a lot of that, certainly. But those elements, I think, are you're right, too disconnected now. So ultimately, I see the schools as the centerpiece for that, to be the traffic cop, if you will, because they already have a lot of the infrastructure to do that kind of connections.
Is it realistic in your, based on your conversations, to ask the school to kind of assume that responsibility?
Certainly not in the near term, but I think Greg Martineau is at least mildly interested in the concept. Would you agree, Roger?
I would agree with that. You know, I think that it was interesting, you know, when we kind of talked about the, you know, the, if you will, kind of the merging from across schools and town. And Greg talked about the school's long-range strategic plan having some of those same characteristics. So it's almost like, you know, we're in sync a little bit already, I think. But I do agree with you that I think it's a little early, although I do think he communicated some of those same things.
Yeah. And again, I think you got to think sort of 10, 20, 30 years down the road with a lot of these things, unfortunately. But you know, if you don't do that, it's never going to happen randomly, I would bet. So worth getting at. So Bill, that's where I think that comes in, but I think that's an important point.
Yeah, I'm just wondering how, in fact, I guess they're part of both Northborough and Southborough, and they answer to the communities in that sense of the term. I was just wondering if, in fact, since historically it hasn't happened, what we would think in the future would make it occur, aside from just setting an objective here.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think leadership is one of the key dimensions. You got to get the Board of Selectmen, the school committees, school administration on board. And I think the way you do that is you socialize it. I mean, often I've lived long enough with these processes that you start with something and people say, that's the dumbest idea I've ever heard. And people keep talking about it and it grows on people. And all of a sudden, 10 years later, it was somebody else's idea, but it's happening kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
I'm hoping something like that can happen here, but don't know.
Okay.
So we're okay on the overall goal for schools? Going once, going twice?
I don't know what the private schools are, what objective they would have in terms of integrating with the community. But whatever.
There's some interest in that, as a matter of fact.
I'm sorry, you said?
I think they have some interest in that longer term.
Oh, really?
Resources, yeah. The population build out, I think pretty straightforward. You got to keep all the pieces balanced here.
Mm-hmm.
Anything gets too far out of whack, it drags the others down.
The only thing on that I would add is, did we mention something about a diverse population of being young, medium, old, extra old type of thing? We want a good mix instead of a single demographics.
Worst population demographic adds vitality.
Mm-hmm.
Not well said, but the idea is.
Yeah, I know what you mean. No, yep.
All right, good. Thanks. All right, all set there on to funding. Yeah, gotta figure out a way to pay for all of this good stuff. I think we're up to 43 stories now, Mimi, on building on Route 9.
5 isn't looking so bad.
That's right, relatively speaking.
Everything's relative, huh? Everything's relative.
I think I've worn everybody down. Not a lot of people.
I mean, who does this? Who actually is behind expanding funding mechanisms and the balance associated with that?
I think it ought to be the selectmen.
The selectmen?
I think it should be. We/they have not done this historically, but I have been making noises in this direction to deaf ears pretty much, but I will continue to try.
Okay. So aside from the selectmen, there is no other organization in town that would look at this or be chartered to do something like this?
The advisory committee is interested in understanding where money can come from, certainly, as they look at budget stuff. But they have no policy role directly. They advise on things, but can't determine any policies themselves, so they persuade. And they've done so effectively in a variety of settings. And again, EDC is interested in finding businesses out there, so they certainly are pushing on one dimension here. But again, the selectmen, I think, are it's like, the chief executive of the organization is responsible for making all the pieces work.
Agreed.
Yep. I guess no breakthroughs have been had on the pilot funding.
We're making some progress. Marty Healy's talking about that. I think that I think there's some hope for that. In I don't think anybody's going to agree to pay X $100,000 a year, but I do think there's more project-based kind of thing. So, for example, St. Mark's has paid for a couple of police cruisers historically. So, if we could get a deal where they or Fay or somebody actually keeps the police cruiser fleet current. That's something that, for whatever reason, seems to have been more palatable in the past. And I frankly don't care what the model is as long as you come up with a number that's reasonable.
Yeah, the concern is from my understanding, they continue to pull tax revenue off the books. I mean, so this
Right.
goal is about expanding funding mechanisms. I don't know if we need to have a goal that echoes the town concern of continue to maintain funding or
Yep.
disincentivize the reduced funding.
There's some towns that actually have done deals with nonprofits when they buy a taxable property. They actually continue to pay what the property tax would have been on that property. So not necessarily focused on the current footprint, but as they add new properties that were previously residential properties. So that kind of topic is, I think,
is that covered into here? Should that be an explicit goal?
Did I not list? Yeah, nonprofits. Right. I can add pilot here.
Yeah, just thinking of one. A lot of these are about expansion funding. Yeah. I think there's a lot of concern about the town of just maintaining the funding and reducing incentives to pull properties off the books.
Yeah. Just for anybody who doesn't know, NECC actually pays property taxes in an amount that is similar to what most towns who've had successful pilot programs could expect.
And a side benefit is some of their housing for some of their students on the 40B count.
What was that?
Yeah, some of the housing, the bedrooms that some of the students or residents stay at is counted under our 40B.
Yeah, which is helpful for us. Okay, anything else on this high-level statement?
No, I mean, the high-level statement for this is pretty it's almost in the title. Abandoned funding.
Yeah. Okay. Can I stop now, maybe?
Do we need to take a vote on these statements to forward to APC, or how should we proceed?
I don't necessarily feel compelled to take a vote. We could say that, we approve these high-level goal statements. Well, it doesn't hurt. You want to do that?
Sure, unless anybody else has something else to say on that.
That sounds like a good process to me.
Okay.
Yeah, so
I can move that we approve these high-level goal statements for these particular areas.
I second that.
Passing along to MAPC.
So we have to do a roll call vote. Luttrell, yes. McAleer,
Yes.
Stivers,
Yes.
Probst,
Yes.
Savidovich,
Yes.
Sines,
Yes.
Watson,
Yes.
Challen,
Yes.
McKee,
Yes.
Braccio.
Yes.
Do I have everybody? Oh, no. Richard Wallace.
Yes.
Isn't Joyce? Sorry.
I saw Joyce sign in. I don't know if she's here. Joyce, are you here?
See her earlier.
Joyce?
Oh, no.
Maybe not. Okay.
Sorry.
Okay, I will stop my screen share here. Now can I put my mask back on?
Yes, please,
Probably.
Stan.
Please do. Unanimous vote of support.
So next is housing diversity.
Yep, I will, I forwarded to you and I do apologize. I did not put it in the Google Drive, but I will share it right now. Oh, if you can, Sarah, if you can make me a co-presenter.
Sure, no problem.
Mimi,
All set?
Tom, before you go, if I could just, Mimi, just so you know, I have a phone call with my parents at 9:15, so I'm just gonna bop out at
Okay.
9:15, so you'll see me leave.
All right,
Thank you.
thanks, Lisa.
Sorry, Tom, go ahead.
Okay, I am sharing the executive can you see my screen?
Yep.
Says
Well,
Southborough.
yours looks a lot flashier than mine does.
It's all about the pizzazz.
That's right.
So the Houseborough solid,
What?
I'm twisted already. Is a lengthy document along the details and stuff. Again, the master plan is more of the goal and the visions. So what I did is in what I'm going to present right here is the executive summary of it. And so this is actually cut and paste. It's not in the same format that Sam did. But as you can see on the left-hand side, you have the self-housing goals. And these are probably the goals of the diversified housing that we should discuss. There's some language in this about affordable housing, and I don't want to be totally centric on that. So the final draft going forward to MAPC will probably, again, with discussion from the committee, is to make sure we just have a broad housing goals, not specifically just to affordable housing. Makes sense? I'll take that as a yes. So the Southborough housing goal, I can read it to you, or if it'd be quicker if everybody reads the 6 goals. Again, this is done by the consultant group called COGS. They have done a housing production plan survey through the town. All of us answered it at one point, and their focus to their survey was totally specific around housing, what type of housing the town needs, the diversity of housing, the mixed use of housing, housing for multi-generational housing. And for example, is a single house that has the parents and the children and the grandchildren all together. The affordability of historic houses without destroying the character of the town. So how we can make apartments, affordable apartments or condos. So this whole document goes through a lot of that. But in the executive summary here on the left-hand side of the housing goals is really the summary of them. So I'll give everybody a second to gander through that.
Tom, can you make that a little bigger?
Yes,
For those of us with fading vision. Thanks.
I'll put I'll see if I can put 4 of them on it and then 2 more. Here we go. Is that good for everybody?
Good.
Yep, thank you.
Yeah.
Let's.
Oops. Doesn't sound good.
We ran out of runway at 9 o'clock.
It's just the recording. I must have like a timer on it, but I can start it up again, I think.
That's a subtle
Yeah, I
sign
think
that
it's
we've
because the
talked
meeting may have been scheduled from 7:30 to 9. So
Coronavirus.
Is everybody back on?
I think we didn't get disconnected. It's just the recording
No.
stopped.
Yep.
Okay. I'm sorry.
We're still live on YouTube.
Good.
I have a dual screen thing going, so it's very hard to see what you're seeing from what I see on my other, as I look to my right.
Wait a minute, you have two eyes.
I know, huh? So in the first four, it's pretty much a goal of the town to have options to attract families and then to enable the multi-generation, one of the things is older adults, I don't want to say older adults, but different stages of their lives to remain in Southborough. As you move in here, you were born here, hopefully you buy a house here, you raise your family here, you downsize here, and you spend your golden years here. So we need housing type of goals to fit a lot of those needs. Any comments on the first one? I think that's pretty straightforward.
Good.
Looks good.
The second one is, sorry, go ahead.
I think it's good.
All right, so the supporting local businesses, again, this is about having some diverse local workforce. What that is really telling people that, not everybody has the white collar job in Boston. Some of them are service industry, small businesses that are trying to start up. So we need to have a diverse local workforce with the appropriate housing. Also in the third point, one of the things is we all know we pretty much have a single type of house in Southborough. So one of the things we want to do, a goal is to, besides single families, townhouses, duplexes, small apartment buildings, and appropriate places like that around town, so you can have a wider range. One of the examples that were discussed, now it feels like months ago, was having a zoning change that allows smaller houses. A lot of people that want to downsize want to have one bedroom and a den and a TV room and a kitchen. And they don't want the property to maintain. So, you are in your own house, you have your own property, but you don't want that large house. So some variations of that. Where I grew up in Fitchburg, I grew up in the part of Fitchburg that had a lot of ranches. And now that part of Fitchburg, a lot of people are moving to because they are smaller houses, single level living on a small piece of land that they can easily take care of. So my neighborhood, most neighborhoods turn over for young people, but the neighborhood I grew up turned over for a lot of older people, I guess. And those are the people that need, smaller houses, easier to maintain. And that's something that the town does not have a large inventory. The fourth one is more of the architectural. We don't want to change it to be a cookie cutter type of community. Let's do part of the complementary of our town's architecture. Don't tear down a lot of the old buildings. Let's renovate and keep the character in our wooded spaces. I am going to scroll down to the last 2 points. Everybody can see that. And as we all know, we don't have a lot of land in Southborough that we can do a lot of things. So we want to minimize the impacts of new developments on priority areas for open space conservation, natural resources, and protection. I think that's a goal the town already has, but it's just stating as a housing goal also.
It's great to see it integrated that way.
Yeah, I like it.
And again, we don't want, not that we don't want to be snobby on this, then please don't take it the wrong way, but we want to make sure we're not doing cheap building, quality construction, and that's part of the zoning to make sure a lot of that. So that's just restating that we don't want to, have someone come in and just do, like slot or low cost construction that, down the road will give the homeowner headaches and stuff. So encourage high quality construction, but yet at an appropriate price point for the size of the house. So those are the 6 goals of housing. Does anybody want to comment on any of those? Add any additional goals as the overall housing diversity for the town of Southborough?
Tom, I had a question about sort of tangentially related to this, I think. One of the topics that comes up from time to time is our 40B safe harbor status. And, my understanding, we're about 100 units away from being out of the 40B business without choice, at least, that will keep us protected after the 2020 census data is included. I mean, in some ways that helps the affordable housing stock. In other ways that limits the ability for developers to come in and build more affordable housing, although frankly, 40B in Southborough hasn't produced a lot of what I think of as affordable housing necessarily. Does that issue fit in here, or does it belong someplace else? I think that's an important thing for the town to think about in terms of finding ways to get out from under the gun.
In the document, it is specified what is needed, how much years and stuff. But I don't want a housing goal. Our housing goal should not be targeted or determined or aligned with 40B. I think there's a side benefit of it, of 40B, and it helps our developers coming in with the zoning stuff. But a diversity of housing and 40B, in my mind, should be separated. We want these things, but we're not doing these things because of 40B.
Right. Yeah, I agree. And I guess I view the 40B thing as a way to give us control over the process. Now, the sad truth is we actually haven't taken control of that historically and found ways to motivate construction of the kind of housing that would increase diversity. But in theory, if we did have control of that, we could do a more effective job of doing it. So it's a bit of a two-edged sword there, unfortunately. So
it is, and I totally agree with that. I totally agree that we should have our 40B 10% limit so the town and zoning can control a lot of developments. But then part of me also says we shouldn't dictate our housing diversity to fit that need.
Yeah,
I think they can go hand in hand and they can definitely work together.
Yep.
It's like when I'm on ShopSee. ShopSee's goal is not to make sure we hit our 10% 40B. ShopSee's goal is to promote, to find, to develop, to sell, to offer affordable housing. The side of benefits is 40B. I mean, that's a goal of everything, but the goal of ShopSee should be looking at affordable housing for different economic residents.
Right. Yeah, I mean, in a perfect world, we would get the 10% and the town could do the right job in terms of motivating developers to build the right kind of housing.
Yes.
In the historic world, if we got above the 10%, then it would make it difficult for developers to come in and do things that the town had not done very well historically. So that would put a damper on diversity of housing. So it's a tough call there, unfortunately.
It is a tough call. Again, a lot of this does dictate to affordable housing, housing availability to lower income households with emphasis on earning, again, the $50,000 a year to families below $100,000 a year. People will probably say $100,000, that's not affordable housing, but the cost of Massachusetts living in the state and stuff, that doesn't go that far as it used to if you have a family of 2 or 4 children. Again, more diverse. Some of the things we don't have is rental housing, a lot of inventory of rentals. Again, when we were talking about the train station, I forgot who mentioned it about some kind of cluster housing. That would be a great place to have some kind of rental housing where people can come into town. We'll call it the initial one, love the community, stay here, raise a family, etc. But if we're prohibitive of any kind of affordable housing to get in or rental housing to enjoy the town, that doesn't happen.
Right.
The second page, which I thought is interesting, I'm going to bring it up right now, is some.
Can I ask? I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I was wondering, in terms of, let's say we want to increase density to some extent, rather than having 2-acre properties all over the place. If we want to increase density, is there a concept that you could support that would deal with open space development associated with condos, that sort of thing?
Absolutely, all that. And what's nice, and I think Sam mentioned earlier, the whole wastewater treatment, i.e. septics, is that technology is changing. And Judith and Kathy and myself were discussing this earlier. is that, as that, paradigm of making a septic and a leaching field per single family home, as a lot of that technology changes, like you said, Bill, dictates into a more creative, lower impact on the landscape of housing and stuff like that. I see that as waste treatment technology is now doing a leap forward that we can do a lot of creative ideas with housing and affordable housing and cluster. I don't like to use the word cluster, but groupings of housing together.
Right. I mean, because interestingly enough, if we want to have an open space concept, we want to maintain that flavor of the community. There are properties that, if in fact they were appropriately developed, might provide relatively modest condos or other types of buildings, and at the same time provide open space, so that in fact there is very little impact or less impact on our open space objectives.
Exactly. And then even on the 180 side of that is we have a lot of beautiful large houses on, I'm just going to pick on Parkerville. It'd be nice if, some of them, instead of tearing it down and making 2 or 3 houses out of that property, is that you say you renovate it to make, 2 condos out of it. The aesthetics and the beauty and the architecture of the house still stays there, fits into the town, fits into the street where it's always been for the last 100 years, but then you also have additional housing options into it. That was another thing we were looking into also.
So, Mimi, how does the town incent that kind of development?
Well, the 2-family houses that Tom just mentioned is currently allowed in zoning. You're talking about like a open space residential design?
Yes. Well, let's say just you wanted 10 condos. How do you enforce an open space condo design of that type? How does the town, I'm not putting you on a spot, but how do we express that as an objective as part of what we're talking about here with respect to housing?
So it would be a new zoning bylaw, because there is nothing currently we have the over 55, which allows condos, but there's no open space requirement in that at all. So it would be a bylaw change.
Gotcha. So is that part of what we're talking about here then?
Well, we're talking about general goals now, but that when we drill down into the minutia, that would come up.
All right. Sorry.
Exactly. And same thing, I know we've been, the whole town's been talking about mixed use, where you have commercial on the bottom and possibly apartments, condos on the second floor. Again, that's a zoning change and stuff like that. And like Mimi said, it's the goal to have the diversity of housing. And the devil is in the details. Some of it's going to need some kind of zoning changes. But the goal has to be, what do we want it to look like? And the work of each individual committees has to see how we can make that happen.
Okay.
So once this plan, actually, I do invite everybody to read it. I think it's very well done. Once the final is out, like I said, this is just the executive summary. There's some details of how to get there. Listing exactly, I think what Bill, you were saying, we need, these are our limitations. Septic, waste management, wastewater management, some zoning changes. It just identifies it. It doesn't fix it or changes the language in any of those things, because I think that belongs to the individual committees to do that. But if we have a goal of what we want to do, it's where I think the master plan should be directed.
Yep, agreed.
I didn't take as long as Sam, and I do apologize.
Wait a minute, I've got some more slides I can show.
Just need more practice. That's all.
But I will change the format of this. It's in a PDF and I had a heck of a time changing it to a Word doc, which I have now. So I can manipulate it a little bit more and present it to more of the format that Sam has if we want to be consistent.
So what does everybody feel on the housing goal?
That was great, Tom. Thank you.
Yeah, that's very well
Very
done.
good.
Good, yeah.
Very good.
I like
That's good.
And it's
I
not-
love that open space is incorporated into the housing plan. It's great.
It's not just me, Kathy and Judith. We had a very good conversation about it too.
Yeah,
Getting together.
it's really good.
So do we want to take a vote on accepting those 6 housing goals?
Sure.
I'll make a motion
Mhm.
to accept the 6 housing, actually, let's read it exactly. Southborough housing goals as is stated in the draft of the housing production plan.
Second.
Okay, here we go again. Roll call vote. Latrell, yes. McAleer,
Yes.
Stivers,
Yes.
Davidovich,
Yes.
where'd you go? Signs,
Yes.
Probst,
Yes.
McKee,
Yes.
Challen,
Yes.
Watson,
Yes.
Wallace,
Yes.
and Joyce, are you there? No choice. Okay. Now, the next theme area is accessibility and connectivity, and neither Bonnie nor Kathy are here. But their goal statement is on the Google Drive. Somebody who's more technology adept than I am could share that. That would be.
Here, let me go to, I'll give it a shot.
Okay,
Let me go
thank
to the
you.
Google Drive. Come on.
I saw an interesting statistic the other day that Walmart sales of shirts have gone up significantly and pants have gone down significantly.
Mhm.
People dress for Zoom.
You shared that last time, Sam.
I think it's pretty interesting.
It is very interesting.
Just don't stand up. That's all we ask.
So Mimi, which directory is that file in? The meeting prep?
No, it's a set. There's a high level section called topics.
Yep. Yep, I'm in there.
And then it should be accessibility and connectivity.
Yep, and there's 2 documents in there.
Yeah, there's the original one that I think Pat worked on, and then there's a second one was that from Bonnie?
Is that the one that says MPC objective category?
The one that was updated a couple days ago is accessibility and connectivity when Doc
Okay.
and
All right.
Meme. We updated it.
Let me share my desktop again, folks, if you like. Can we see it?
Yep.
Yeah,
Can we still see it? 'Cause I
Yeah,
did-
that's the
not anymore.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, sorry.
Yeah.
Can you see it now?
Nope.
Seeing Dell,
You're on the wrong
Dell.com.
tab.
Dell.com.
We need
It
another
works for
tab.
Dell.
Mhm.
I'll resume share. Hang on.
Too many monitors.
I know.
Are they Dell brand monitors, I'm assuming?
Touche.
He gets an employee
Yeah.
discount.
Boom. Boom.
All right.
Good?
Yeah.
That's good.
All right, go. Do you want me to make it bigger?
Hey, Mimi,
Yeah, please. That would help.
Mimi,
For
this,
senior citizens.
yeah, Mimi, this is Roger. Just a heads up. I have to get it on another call at 9:30. So just FYI.
Okay.
I'll
Oh,
have to go to bed at 9:30.
Do we lose our quorum? When do we lose our quorum?
No, I think we need 9, so that's good, right?
Is this big enough to see?
Yeah, right.
It is, yeah.
Thank you.
That's good.
Mascot, MBTA.
Now, is there accessibility in here that is consistent with the new accessibility committee charter, which actually expanded the concept of accessibility far beyond the sort of traditional ADA stuff in terms of accessible technology, for example, for people who are visually impaired, let's say, to have access to town technical resources, websites, et cetera, et cetera.
I think I can say no, Sam.
Okay. I mean, I think that dimension would be useful to at least connect somehow, maybe not, we don't have time or resources here to fully develop that, but to add something in there that recognizes that, I think would be useful, since the town has recently made the commitment to support that concept.
Right. I mean, certainly at a minimum, some element of technology, if mentioned here, that had an accessibility concept in it might make some sense.
Okay. And I can't remember off the top of my head, but it might be worth going back and looking at the accessibility committee details.
Oh, yeah.
Recently approved, to make sure that there aren't other pieces of that that could be integrated here.
Agreed. I think we have to go beyond 521, which is the state and federal, well, it's a state law associated with architectural access.
Right.
And get into things like telecommunication access, websites, yada, yada, that sort of thing.
Meeting participation.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, well, embarrassingly, sometimes we publish stuff on our website that, let's say, certain readers would increase the size of the image for people who are visually impaired. Doesn't work that way. A PDF is pretty good. Or a picture, a GIF is a pretty good example of stuff that doesn't work that way. So we should have policies that address those sorts of things, I would think, in terms of our website, our ability to electronically communicate, etc. That may be more important after things settle down here than it was historically. And
Right.
if we include all sorts of disabled individuals, whether they're hearing impaired or visually impaired, that would make some sense, I would think, and probably be a reasonably stated objective by us.
Or, I mean, not even, visually or hearing as much as mobility impaired. People have the ability to actually, they can't get to a physical, but in fact would have much easier access electronically.
Oh, I agree with that.
Listen
Yep.
and participate.
I see
Maybe
that
sort of a-
Mr. Litt has a comment. I don't know if the chair wants to recognize him.
Yes.
I could feel Mr. Litt hovering here.
I had a sneaking.
You need to allow, yeah.
I just allowed him to talk. Mr. Litt?
Yeah.
Your microphone is working, but
Oh,
Not be
there's
working.
Audio issues on your side, Tim.
I think so. You got pretty excited.
You could
If-
try putting in the chat. If you're having microphone trouble.
Yeah, I think we're,
Is,
Tim,
is,
I think you've got some
this-
feedback going on your side. We're
yeah,
here.
is this meeting format set up to allow kind of public? I didn't think it was.
Typically,
Yeah. Tim, you got an audio problem there.
right.
Yeah.
Like there's a connection.
Yeah, still can't
Can
understand.
anyone in
Been here.
Yeah,
Anyone-
several octaves above. I think that sounds like there's a Mickey Mouse. Yeah.
Mickey Mouse filter applied.
Tim, you the chat function.
I'm sorry, I just muted.
Not
We
working?
can't.
Still
Yeah.
not working, Tim.
Thank you, Mr. Litt.
Or he can try the chat feature. I think.
Yep, the chat.
Chat might work, yes.
Yeah. So, Bill, I guess my thought was simply maybe by reference in here, you could link in the Accessibility Committee issues, scope or whatever.
Okay,
With this sort of one fell swoop to at least capture it for the time being and then fill in more detail later.
all right.
So is there an additional goal statement that we want to add?
Maybe you could do that with the Accessibility Committee to have an extra statement to come up with some language to connect that, include it.
Mimi, I would say that this isn't complete at this stage, and we would continue to work on it.
I agree with that. I think we have to take, instead of just a physical mobility around the town, for both connectivity, like you said, hearing and visually impaired.
Yeah.
Tim provided a comment.
Yep, can everybody see that?
Yes.
No.
Yep.
Uh,
Under the
So if you
chat.
go into more, if you don't see a little chat or something coming
Oh,
up,
I got you. I'm with you. Chat, what do I got here?
Yep. Yep, good points.
Yep, exactly.
So I think all these things are good with a couple of additions. Amy, should we actually vote so we can keep the process moving to support these with the additions that we've discussed that
So, sorry, can I just, we've actually got two documents here for accessibility and connectivity. There's the original document that Kat kind of led the first group to create. And this is an additional document that Bonnie and I think Kathy Bartolini worked on. And I think they need to be kind of merged in some way, because I think there's some areas where there's some kind of overlap, but also there I mean Kat's original document I think was in a very similar format to Sam's and the one we've used for open space, but this one I think isn't. So we need to, my suggestion would be we have a kind of a vote to do that merging. And I'm happy to work with Kathy and Bonnie and see if I can kind of pull it together into one document.
would that work for you, Kat and Bill?
Yeah, it would work. It would work for me. I can either be included or I'll get in touch with Bonnie and make sure she recognizes a couple of issues here. Sure.
I mean, Judith, you can connect with Bill directly too.
Yeah, no, I can connect with
Fair enough.
I'll kind of just link with everyone outside this call.
That's fine.
So should we then vote to appoint Judith and others as needed to collect and update the existing documents to provide something for MAPC to use?
I would support and second that motion for sure.
I will so move then. So we
Sure.
got moved and
You're
seconded.
quite good at this, Sam, aren't you?
Hey, it's past my bedtime. Come on, we senior citizens. Beauty rest.
Senior citizens.
So we're voting to merge the two documents?
And,
Put them together, yeah.
and
Submit-
update as we've discussed here.
Okay.
Mimi, would you like me to read the motion back to you?
No, that's okay.
Okay.
I'm just wondering if we need to look at the other document.
We presented it, so it was as presented to the committee. I don't think it changed from the original presentation.
No, it was the one that was presented back in October. Yeah. Yeah.
All right.
Bring it up if it's still in a Google Drive.
Yeah, it's the one next to the one that you've just pulled up, Tom.
All right. Let me share again.
This is on monitor 4.
All right, can you see this? Master plan objective number 3.
I think you have to, a
Let
little
me make it
larger.
bigger for Sam.
Good, thank you.
That's a pedestrian and like fun category.
Let me just make it. How's that?
Nice.
Yeah, I think I recall this one. And again, this does the ACC connection here, which is good.
It does the what, Sam?
It recognizes the accessibility committee
Yes.
expansion. It doesn't provide the detail, but it provides the link here. So
Yeah.
Mimi, I was going to try to stay for this vote, but I do have to run. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Roger.
thanks, Roger.
Stay
home.
Thanks, Roger.
Roger.
Again, I continue to have confidence that Judith and others can combine these appropriately and come up with a good statement for MAPC.
Thank you, Judith.
Yeah, thank you, Judith.
May I make a request? This is
Absolutely.
Kate. Can you guys all, I know you have it all in the Google Drive, but just for my minutes and to just make it a little bit easier, would you guys all individually email me these documents? Because then it's just quicker and easier for me to attach them.
Absolutely.
Yep.
I'd really appreciate it. Thank you.
Sam, let me ask this question. Do you think a reference to the expanded ADA charter or additional details would be required in a consolidated document?
I think if it's easy to do relatively, I would add a little more detail out of the ACC document. So for example, to have some language in here about technology access.
Yes. Okay.
Specifically, and I think there are some other elements for the ACC charter. So the topic areas I think would be very helpful to include, and then you could refer to ACC charter for law for.
So what we may be voting on is not necessarily what we individually see in these documents. In other words, it's not a simple merge. We may be expanding the scope of what we're talking about.
That's what I think would be likely result. And again, I have great confidence that the Judith and others can do that appropriately. And if it turns out we need to do tweaking later on, nothing says we can't do that later on too. This is not the final version, certainly.
Okay.
So there's a motion on the floor. Any other discussion?
Tom has Tim has a comment.
Oops, something happened.
The ACC was renamed to the Southborough Public Accessibility Committee, assuming the bylaw passes in fall.
Yep.
Mhm.
Okay, so we ready to vote?
Yep.
Mhm.
Okay, Latrell, yes. Sines,
Yes.
Stivers,
Yes.
McKee,
Yes.
Davidovich,
Yes.
Markelier,
Yes.
Probst,
Yes.
Watson,
Yes.
Wallace,
Yes.
Joyce?
She raised her hand,
Oh,
says in the comment. Is that means I want to ask a question, or is that, yes, I raise my hand, I vote yes?
I'm not sure.
I'm not sure.
Do we still have a voting quorum?
Yes.
What does that mean? We have a voting quorum?
We still have 9.
Okay, good.
Okay.
What's that?
7 more areas to go.
Tim, that is correct, but she's also a participant, so she should have her microphone working.
Yes.
So Joyce has been on this the whole time,
Yeah.
but she hasn't participated in the votes.
Correct.
Okay.
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 So, open space, environment and recreation.
So, Judith, I know you had finalized the document. I don't know if you're able to show it.
Yeah, I should be able to. Hang on.
Let me make you a co-host. What's going on here?
Cat.
Yeah, can someone make me?
Trying.
I think that might be Joyce. I mean, it might be easier if Tom could pull it up.
Okay.
Here, I got it. It's all set now, Judith.
Thanks,
you
Tom.
can do it.
Oh, okay. Can I do it?
Not all Toms are technology people, just letting you guys know.
Hang on. Can you see that?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Technology. Do you want to lead on this one, Karen? And I'll.
Sure. Yeah. No, I'm happy to do that. So can everybody see the document that Judith has described
It would be nice if it could be made somewhat larger.
or has displayed?
Oh, hang on a sec.
So I'm able to
Hang on.
make it larger because I actually had to join on my phone. So I'm able to do that just with my fingers. You guys can't do that. So I don't know, Tom,
At
if
the
you're able to
bottom,
make it bigger.
Judith, where it says the page 1 of 3 plus my day. Yep.
Is that better?
Okay,
yeah.
that's great. Perfect. All right, super. So like a lot of these, there's different sections here. So the first section is protection of open space. And I don't know what makes the most sense efficiently wise. Should we go through each section and then talk about it? Or do you want me to go through the whole document?
So is like strategic acquisition and protection of properties, is that like a goal? And or are they
It's one of
all
the
goals?
right. They're all main goal areas.
Okay.
Yeah.
So one of the first goal under.
Sorry, Karen. Sorry, Karen.
No, please, Judith. Yeah, let's do it together. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think one of the things, we worked on this going back to the fall, and we did a little bit of wordsmithing on the two sections around space and environmental, and then because we've had no input from the recreation group to date. Karen had reached out to Dave Candela and Tim on a couple of occasions. I've just added in the recreation goals from the 2016 OSLP plan, which is, I think they're reasonable. I think the other thing I'll just add in before Karen speaks is that I think we, just given what we've seen tonight in terms of format, we probably just need to flesh out these kind of high level goals a little bit. So to put a little bit more wording around strategic acquisition and protection of properties, because that is the high level goal, and some of the the items underneath it are more around strategies and recommendations. But I think it's got enough substance.
I would agree. Yeah, Judith.
We can review and hopefully vote on this one. So I'll shut up now, Karen.
No, don't shut up. Don't shut up, Judith. Let's do it together. Yeah. So I would agree, and maybe one of the learnings from this is, having a kind of standard format before each of us had gone off on our separate ways might have made this a little easier. But so the first main area is the protection of open space. And within the protection of open space, we have a couple of goal areas. The first is strategic acquisition of properties. And I won't read this to you as you're going through it. You can kind of see that. But
question on one of those.
Please, yeah.
The last bullet under A, the develop a more comprehensive and holistic governance structure. What does that mean?
So it's a governance structure around, the thought was around open space overall. So right now we have SOLF, we have the Open Space Preservation Commission, we have the Trails Commission, we have SVT. And so really starting to try to create more cohesion and collaboration between those different groups as it pertains to the governance structure of the open space.
Okay, thanks.
Does it answer your question? Yeah. I would also say, because I really tried to think a little more deeply about how does any of this change given COVID and what we're all going through right now. And we had really kind of moved away from the strategic acquisition of open space in the Open Space Preservation Commission, not moved away exclusively, but but recognized that we only had a certain amount of money. But we have, I think, all recognized the